Hello again, you sick, twisted weather freaks and weather aficionados across the eastern U.S. It's DT from Weather Risk. Time for another edition of This Week in Weather. I am your host and meteorologist DT from Weather Risk, the commander of chaos, the captain of confusion, the colonel of catastrophe. It's time to talk about weather, and man, do I have weather to talk about for you guys. It's just clicking, baby. I'm telling you, lots to get through. Let's get right to it. This is going to be a good episode of This Week in Weather. Let me just show you that right there. All right, we're going to start out taking a look at the tropics. Yes, we still have tropical activity to deal with, which is unfortunate or fortunate depending on whether or not you're a sick, twisted freak or a regular person. Now, here, that's the remains of Kirk. And Kirk actually looks pretty good when this satellite picture was taken. Now, this was taken here at 19Z, which is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then, of course, this little system here is 98L, and this is partially the remains of Florence, a little bit. Now, a lot of people are trying to make this into the return of Florence. It's not. It's a little piece of Florence. It's separated from the upper low. Florence is still way up in here going like this over the last several days. So this is a little piece which broke off. So not exactly Florence, but it is a little tropical development, and it deserves some focus. So we're going to do that here. Now, this here is Kirk. And you can see this, the upper left is the regular satellite picture. And again, 1730Z, that's 1:30 this afternoon. And then the evening picture here, this is around 8 o'clock you can this evening in the bottom right. And you can see there is some cyclonic circulation, as you can see in here with the clouds and these bands going in this way, clearly some. But the system is really booking, that's the problem. So the low level center is over here, and it really needs to slow down, and it's not. And it's not going to because of the overall trade winds here. So that's kind of a problem. If you look at the models here, again, we're dealing with a purely tropical system. So the hurricane models this far south usually do a pretty good job. And you can see they all move it in to the Caribbean except for one of the models. And they even show some intensification here up to 60, 72 hours before it falls apart in the Eastern Caribbean. Many of the models show that. So even on the European, we can see it here on this slide on the upper left. This is the European valid 72 hours. You can see this here is Kirk, and then it just falls apart right there. It doesn't do anything by 120 hours, which is a Saturday, September 29th. It just doesn't do anything. So yes, the European agrees that it's going to fall apart as well. This is what it looks like up closer. It looks fairly impressive system. But the problem is, again, it's not likely to be an impacting for the U.S. And the reason for this is because of this. This is the front here. This is the current front. The moisture is coming up the front here. And this eventually we have a front which is going to come in. This is moving very slowly in this direction. Very slowly. And this front is going to kick it out to sea. And you'll see that in just 1 second. And there it is on the surface map. You can see this evening, as of 8 o'clock this evening, you can see that it is, well, that's where it's located. Now, the models, again, the GFS ensemble in the upper left, and then the Monday afternoon hurricane models. And again, they get it fairly close to Hatteras. You can see that. Yeah, that's fine. And, it could become a tropical storm, I suppose. 48, 60 hours, yeah, it could become a tropical storm. But again, it's not Florence. This would be a totally different name, and give it a different name. Now, I'm sure your usual weather clowns are going to make an argument. Oh, it's really Florence, and the Hurricane Center screwed this up. No, they didn't screw this up. It's not Florence. Okay, it's not Florence. Thank you. That's my point. Okay. Anyway, all right, slide 10. Now, this is interesting, so let's talk about this here a little bit. This here's the soil moisture over the last 30 days. And if you think it's been wet, but not just in Virginia, North Carolina. It's been wet everywhere. Now, obviously, there's a big divide here. Once you get east of the Rockies, very different type of pattern. But the last 30 days, now these are percentages here. So you can see Iowa, the heart of the Western Corn Belt, a lot of heavy rain there, 500, 400% above normal. And in here, this area in here is 300% above. Look at even Texas, that much above normal in September. So it has been wet everywhere. Only a few dry spots. One of them is in here, Georgia, and a little bit in southern Missouri and northeastern Kansas. But it has been wet. Northern New England also kind of on the dry side as well over the last 30 days. But generally, it's been wet east of the Rockies. And if we look at the actual numbers here, this is since the first of the month, actually. And you can see, so we almost through the month here. And you can see, again, the purple stuff, if you don't know, that's the dark, this is like 25 inches, 15, 25 inches. So you can see it in here, that's 25 inches in here. You can see down in this area as well. But even outside, the light purple and this stuff, that's 10, 11, 9 inches above normal in this area. Much of Pennsylvania, even higher, 12, 15 inches. Kentucky. So there's a lot of rain here. Even in September, getting 4 inches of rain in a lot of these red spaces, it's been a wet, wet month. And if we can look at this in more detail, obviously this here is the Midwest, but just to show you again how wet it has been for for even areas west of the Appalachians. Now, this is obviously important to me because I do a lot of grain commodity forecasting, as some of you may know. So obviously, the super wet ending to the season is actually affecting the harvest. There's so much water and the rain coming down. The pattern's going to remain that way. All right, slide 13 now. This here, let's go back and take a look at the patterns since September 10th. Let's see what's been going on and whether the pattern's going to change. All right, so we can look at a few important features here. Now, this here's your trough. You can see that. There's the trough. See the ridge here, the red line? This is an omega ridge. You can see what it's shaped like that, shaped like the omega. There's a polar vortex. Yay! We're appearing for the first time. But the problem is, with the trough here, you're going to get a ridge here, and that's what we had. And of course, that makes a fairly warm pattern. And it keeps the jet stream running fairly far to the north, and it also provides a lot of moisture in this area. So that's what we've been seeing. Now, the next slide is September 13th. There's the approach of Florence on the North Carolina coast. But look at this monster ridge. I mean, the trough right here. Wow. Full long wave trough. Big ridge here. Oh, by the way, that squiggly line, that's the weather symbol for ridge, in case you don't know that. Another ridge is here. You can see that. So, again, this is a warm, dry pattern for the East Coast. Midwest, very stormy, very wet. And of course, we know what Florence did, trapped in the ridge there. Now, this is September 16th. Now, Florence is still weakened, but you can see it right here. And again, we have a big trough on the West Coast again that won't go away, and a big ridge over here. And as a result, this whole area saw significant rain. This energy coming up this way, the strong jet stream, upslope, the approaching curvature point here in the ridge. So it was a very wet pattern for the Midwest as well. And then and very warm for the eastern United States underneath that ridge. You can clearly see that. And then this is the recent slide, September 21. Again, not much has changed. The energy from the West Coast, is moving into the Midwest here, Plain States, and another one is coming here, so that hasn't changed. And we still have our ridge here, the southeastern states. The ridge is a little weaker. It's not as big as it was before, okay? And we do have a little more polar vortex situation developing here, but it's still a warm pattern, and it's still a very wet one for the Midwest in particular, and for the East Coast. Now, the reason why I mention this is because let's take a look at the soil trends, short-term and long-term. You can clearly see long-term over the last few months, it's been large areas of above normal rainfall right here over the Midwest and into the Northeast. And the short-term trend shows this increasing. This is September 15th, before Florence made landfall. But you can clearly see how wet it has been. So not only is it quite wet, but the short-term trend is increasing in terms of the above normal rainfall. It's definitely going up here. And that's important because what happens is when you have large areas of above normal rainfall in a certain portion of the country, it can affect the jet stream pattern, just like large drought areas can, just like large pools of warm water in the Pacific Atlantic Ocean or large pools of cold water. On the land, the difference is large and persistent areas of above normal rainfall where the ground is saturated. Not just a pool of water, a large, persistent, long-term areas of below normal rainfall. And the classic case of this was the winter of 2009. This is the map for the long short-term trend in November 2009 in the autumn going into the winter. And there was so much above normal rainfall in October, late September, October, November, that there was actually a significant harvest left on the ground to rot. They weren't able to get it in to the storage bins in time and harvest it. Look how wet that pattern is. Now take a look at that and take a look at that. Take a look at that. Take a look at that. Now we're not there yet. We have a ways to go. But we're getting there. No doubt about it. Temperatures over the last month so far, yeah, it has been warm. That red stuff, 6 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit above normal of the eastern U.S. You can see more of that here. Look at that. That's been a warm, warm September. Now, here's the actual pattern here, September 24th. And again, we can see our ridge is right here. And another ridge is right there. You can see. And here's our trough. Now, the trough is a little further to the east, over the Rockies a little bit. So this is a transition pattern. This trough's moving through. It's bringing the cold fronts through and the rain, and we can see that. This here is our surface map. Oh, let me clear this out. Surface map. Here we go. As of September 24th. And you can see this is a little tropical, semi-tropical low here that's being looked at a little bit right there. You see that, but you can see the first front here, high pressure to the north, bringing in the east winds, keeping it nice and cool the last couple of days. And there's our other front, bringing the rain to the Midwest. And this is supported by this upper air map, which is here. And again, we compare that 24th to this. Now this takes us to the 26th. So the trough, which is here, see that trough, goes to, there you go, on the 26th. It's now in the Midwest. You can see it very clearly. And we can see a decent sized trough here. We have a nice ridge over the south, off the western Atlantic Ocean here, and a pretty good ridge off the west coast of North America. Now notice the ridge is not over the west coast, it's a little to the east. And as a result, the trough is going to be here, not over the east coast. So it's important where your ridges actually are located in the Eastern Pacific, whether they're on the coast or in the Eastern Pacific or the Gulf of Alaska. Those are not the same thing. So this is just a meteorological insight to give you there. Now that trough is going to progress eastward and drive the cold fronts with it. So here we go. This is the surface map here for Tuesday evening. You can see the fronts coming down here very nicely. I'll draw on them briefly. There's our cool high pressure right there. You can see that. There's the first front, second front, and here's the first one you can see here. So we're getting south winds. Now this little closed isobar is that little tropical system. So it might hit Hatteras and go like that. But you can clearly see this next front is going to kick it out to sea. And of course here it is on Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. Very strong front right here. A nice big area of seasonally cool high pressure coming in. And there's our little tropical system being kicked out to sea. All right. This is now Thursday morning, high pressure over New England. The front is now pushed through Virginia into North Carolina. Some showers to the front, but for the most part, it's not a big deal. And the next system, and there's another cold front with our next big surge of cool air. Low pressure is here, and the front's there. And that's actually, this purple line represents air mass cold enough for snow in North Dakota on the 27th of September. Maybe. Okay, so now this pushes on through, and this is 96 hours. Here's our deep trough, big ridge on the west coast. You can see that. Really big ridge here. Oops, one marker. Big ridge here. And look at this monster trough here. Very impressive. Pulling the cold air down. Yee, cold air, we love that. Front's already through. Now we still have a ridge off the southeast coast, so it's a transition pattern. It's not a full-blown, big blast of cold air, but it is a transition pattern. This is on the surface map here on the Saturday going into the weekend, Friday night, and you can see although the remains of the old front is here, and there's our next front right here. Very strong look. Actually, it's about here. Let me clear that out so you can see it. I'll draw it again because I didn't draw that very well. And you can see the next front is right here. And you're getting moisture overrunning the front right here. And again, this is some pretty chilly air up in this area. Now, the problem is it doesn't last very long. This image here takes us into Saturday night, Sunday. And again, we have a new piece of energy entering the west coast here. A nice piece of shortwave. And that forces the ridge to re-intensify here. So we're getting a nice flow here, but the cold air is not plunging south. Now this is a nice high for a Saturday night, Sunday morning. And it's going to be over here soon. And the front is like this. But the real heart of the cold air still stays to the north because this is not the quite pattern you need to get the cold air. You need the cold air to do this. And it's not. It's turning here. So, okay, it's a step in the right direction. It's cooler. It's drier. But we're not there yet. And so then here, now this is like I said, Sunday night and Monday morning. You can see the high. It's going to be a cool one Monday morning, October 1st. It's going to be a nice one in the Mid-Atlantic states and New England. Don't get me wrong. This is going to be pretty nice to see. But it doesn't last. Again, here what happens is by 180 hours, the new trough is on the west coast again. Okay, so the ridge is here, but there's a new trough here. It undercuts it. See this? So this is known as a split flow. You see what the pattern looks like? It branches into two pieces. Now in the wintertime, split flows are great for winter storms, but not great in the autumn. Not yet. And we still have a ridge here over the southeast, over the Gulf Coast states. You can see it right here. So there's our polar vortex. Yay, we love the polar vortex. It's our friend. A lot of cold air here, but right along here, there's a stalled front, and it's going to bring rain to the Midwest and portions of the Northeast. And we'll see that in just a second. Now, beyond that, what happens is the operational European, this is the regular European, okay, 240 hours, regular European, you can see that there, okay. What it does is it brings in the trough into here, and we have a big ridge that forms like this over the east coast. Again, gets warm and humid, and you can see a stalled front here, a low over Iowa, Wisconsin, a big front like this. This is super warm for early October and humid. Big Bermuda high off the coast. Boo. We don't want that to be the case. And fortunately, the European ensemble says that's not the case. That's correct. So this, let me move this out of the way. That or this. Operational European ensemble. Ka-ching, go with that one. Nice big polar vortex here. Decent sized trough. Not great. Good ridge on the west coast. I think this is a cooler pattern. Still a little bit of ridging here, a little bit of ridging there, but this is a substantially better pattern. Not bad for early October. Not great, not super cold, but not bad. All right, slide 33 here. This is 6 to 10 day. Now, what I want to point out here is, again, remember in the 6 to 10 day, we're looking at this sort of pattern here and this sort of pattern here. Remember that ridge? And we talked about all the cold air was stopping here. Well, sure enough, look what happens. If we go back to that slide, there we go. There's your temperatures, 2-meter temperatures, 6 feet above the ground. Look what all the really cold air is. Right here, really cold stuff and that's Canada relative to normal. Now, people are going to be bitching and whining, and of course, south of that, over the lower mid Atlantic, the Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley, it's still warm by a couple of degrees. Stop bitching about this, folks. It's October. It's not January. Moreover, you need Canada to get cold first before you can get your cold into the U.S. You have to have Canada cold first. This is a part of the natural process. Stop whining about it. Stop complaining about it. This is the way it's supposed to be. It's going to happen. It's going to take its time. Canada has to get cold first. Okay, there you go. And then we go beyond that. In the 11 to 15 day, the ridge is fairly strong over western Canada. That's not bad. That's good. It looks like it's going to hold here. Now here's our trough right here. You can see that over the Midwest, again, moving to the East Coast. And again, the heart of the cold air is still staying to the north because we're still not quite there yet. We still have this big ridge off the East Coast, so that's keeping it close to normal here. But which is, again, from mid-October is getting cooler, but not quite cold there yet. Now, longer term, here's the CFS. Some of the CFS weekly models that I look at. You may not know about the site, but that's okay. I know it. And you can see this is the 6 to 10 day. Notice again, it has this ridge right there. See that? Okay, so we have our ridge in the Eastern Pacific over Alaska, and we have a fairly decent trough here over the southern Canada, U.S. Canada border. It's not a great pattern. It's built up of cold air in Canada, which is not coming south. And then the 11 to 15 day, again, we still have a little bit of ridge there. See that? And the flow is this way, so a lot of cold air is building in Canada, and a trough is right here in the southwestern states. So it's a step. It's a step. It's getting there. Now, if you go to the 16 to 20 day, this is even better because now you can see, again, a really good flow here coming out of the northwest Canada, a big buildup of cold air. The ridge is still here, so that's good. And you can see the temperature is finally getting cold in the east sometime around the middle of October. Sustained cold. Well, we'll see. Okay, and then if we look at the European weeklies, now this takes us to week 3, 14 to 21 day, and you can see that's a pretty decent ridge over Alaska on the west coast. That's not bad. Now that's not here. That's here on the west coast. That's pretty good. That's what you want, and the trough is fairly decent here. Okay, again, not the coldest pattern in the world, but definitely a cold pattern. And that brings temperatures probably close to below normal over the eastern U.S., especially over the Midwest. Another reason why we should be bullish about this change over time is because of this hurricane. This is the super typhoon, and I forget which name it is. It's, well, you can see in the upper right corner here. Anyway, the point is that the typhoon here, which is 916 millibars, it is a Category 5 hurricane. 916 last I saw. Very intense hurricane. It's going to swing up this way, pass between Taiwan and southwest Japan, and then eventually it's going to go into Japan or very close to it. So it is going to recurve in this direction. And when it does that, it often means a trough appears in the central eastern U.S. 10, 12 days later down the road. So that's a very interesting sign. And also here is the MJO, the Madden-Julian oscillation. And again, you can see it's right here, the 21st to 23rd, right there. It's in phase 8. It's moved out of the neutral circle now into phase 8. And if you look at the different MJO models, you'll see that the European and the Australians, which are the two best MJO models, bring it out into phase 8, 1, and then phase 2. 8, 1, and phase 2 through the end of October or beginning of November, through the whole month of October. So what does that mean for October? Well, it means something. This is phase 8 in October. And you can see that this shows that the trough is going to be here over the Midwest of the Plain States, not on the East Coast. And then the ridge you can see is just off the coast like this. So, and a big strong Scandinavia ridge here, which might be very beneficial for the winter later on. But the trough is over the Midwest and central Canada. And that generally is what we're seeing when we look at that. So again, good model agreement. Again, excellent agreement with the MJO as well. And then finally, this is phase 1. What does that mean in October? More of the same. Say that and that. Late phase 1. The mean trough stays over the Midwest, the Plain States. Okay, and there is some cold in the east. It's nothing to be excited about. Canada looks very cold. A lot of below normal heights. A big buildup of cold air in Canada. Love seeing that. So it's like I said, it's definitely getting better in October, and the warm pattern is definitely going to come to an end. There's no doubt about that. Okay, and finally, let me remind you here that In Search of Winter, my new blog on the Weather Risk website begins next week, and hopefully you guys will stop by and take a look at it. This is meteorologist DT from Weather Risk. I'll talk to you soon, and see you on the Twitter page and over on the Facebook page.